A wave of interconnected, systemic instability that spans millions of square miles. Civil war in Sudan, constitutional fragmentation in Somalia, and ethno-nationalist insurgencies in Ethiopia are currently active simultaneously. Cross-border standoffs over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and Red Sea port access are compounding these internal fractures. A massive, trans-regional proxy war is now subsuming these domestic events, pulling them into a network of interconnected Red Sea fault lines. Middle Eastern middle powers are driving this escalation, splitting the region into a revisionist axis seeking to upend the status quo and a defensive coalition of states seeking to maintain it. To understand this crisis, we have to map the geopolitical layers from the bedrock of local politics up to the overarching middle power rivalries. At the bedrock layer, domestic conflicts in Sudan and Somalia center on power and resource sharing. Sudan's war is a violent struggle for control over patronage networks, fought between entrenched factions. The paramilitary RSF runs an active rebellion against the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF. This map details the current control of terrain across Sudan's Kordofan region. The town of El Obeid serves as the strategic fulcrum where both forces are currently deadlocked in central Sudan. In Somalia, constitutional and territorial fragmentation has paralyzed the state. This map shows the regional administrations of Jubaland and Puntland. Both states have suspended ties with the federal government of Somalia to reject its attempts to centralize the country's election structures. The decades-long breakaway status of Somaliland further complicates Somalia's territorial integrity. These localized resource-sharing disputes create sovereign fractures that inherently invite external interference. In Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is overseeing a violent transition away from the country's historical system of ethnic federalism. Abiy's mandate focuses on centralizing political power and dissolving traditional, regionally based power brokers. This centralization triggered the devastating Tigray War and subsequently sparked new insurgencies from previously incorporated groups. This map highlights the active operational areas of the heavily armed TPLF in Tigray and the Fano ethno-nationalist militias in the Amhara region. Federal counterinsurgency campaigns have alienated former domestic allies, leaving the central government increasingly isolated. Ethiopia's internal fragility is directly at odds with its leaders' regional ambitions, creating a volatile core at the center of the Horn. Demographic growth and economic demand drive Ethiopia's structural expansionism, which overlays these domestic conflicts. This image shows the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD. It is the first vector of Ethiopia's ambition, securing regional energy dominance. The unilateral operation of the dam poses a perceived existential threat to downstream water access for Egypt and Sudan. The second vector is Ethiopia's aggressive demand for direct, sovereign Red Sea access to escape its reliance on neighboring ports. This map illustrates the maritime choke points at Assab, Tajura, and Berbera. Ethiopia's goal to shift reliance away from Djibouti threatens Djibouti's GDP. A port for recognition deal with Somaliland violates Somalia's sovereignty, triggering backlash. Furthermore, Ethiopian rhetoric regarding historical rights to Assab threatens Eritrea's sovereignty. These strategic imperatives have triggered a regional security dilemma, forcing Ethiopia's disparate neighbors into a unified defensive posture. Middle Eastern powers recognized these African fault lines and explicitly mapped their strategic rivalries onto them. The blue alignments on this map represent the status quo axis: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. They seek to contain Ethiopian expansion and support central governments for maritime predictability. Egypt and Saudi Arabia are building strategic containment nodes by strengthening ties with Djibouti and Eritrea. The green regions denote the revisionist axis, driven primarily by the UAE, with strategic support from Israel. These revisionists leverage decentralized actors to disrupt legacy power structures. The UAE currently backs Ethiopia, heavily arms the RSF in Sudan, and operates Somaliland's breakaway ports. This trans-regional overlay weaponizes domestic African disputes, ensuring they are well-funded, technologically advanced, and highly resistant to local diplomacy. These tensions are now radiating across the critical Red Sea maritime corridor. Horizontal escalation now threatens to trigger a multi-domain proxy war, spanning both the African and Arabian coasts. This intense competition distracts regional U.S. allies from unified maritime security and counterterrorism operations. The resulting security vacuum provides an opening for Iran, Russia, and radical Islamist insurgencies to exploit the geopolitical chaos. Western policymakers must move past piecemeal diplomatic efforts and mediate these conflicts as a single, interconnected web. The Middle East and the Horn of Africa are no longer separate theaters. They are inextricably linked as a single, highly volatile geopolitical system.